Hello, duckies and dice fiends. Welcome back. It is Tuesday, and that means it's time for the Table Talk Show. I am Kay. I am one of your hosts. Let me figure out which side David is. David's over here today. This is David. David, who the heck is you? And what the heck is we doing here?
I am continually baffled by Radio Dumbass. The track list today includes the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme. But hi, I'm David. This is the Chaotic Wholesome Presents Table Talk Show, where every Tuesday we talk about tabletop stuff, how to be a better person, how to be a better GM, how to be a better player, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity so that everybody can have a good time.
And I'm Kay, your other co-host. Tomorrow, you're going to want to be right back here an hour from now at 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I can do time zone math because it is the final game of Magnificent Pride. It had to be delayed. And we are finally going to get to play Monster Hearts. And it's going to be a wild, spicy time because that table's gold, y'all. It's going to be a good time. So thank you to all of you who joined us for Magnificent Pride last month. And so excited to conclude it with this. And as I think I said before, Friday I'm playing in the first episode of Weird Wilds War over on Entropy Emporium. I got it right. So I will see you Friday. But we are not here to talk about that. We have a very special guest today, and we want to hear all about pirates, Kickstarters, pirate culture, inclusivity on the high seas. So Ben, tell us, who the heck is you, and what the heck is you doing here?
All right. Apologies in advance. My internet has picked the worst possible time to start glitching out a little bit, but hopefully it'll
Everything
stabilize.
wants to be moody when you're live.
Yeah, of course. I'm Ben, better known as SoManyRobots on the internet. I am a content creator for D&D 5th edition. I just concluded a Kickstarter for a new book called Songs of the Spellbound Sea, all about nautical adventures for 5e. Yeah, delighted to be on. Very happy to be joining you and to talk about stuff today.
Hey, Matt. And yes, instead of a parrot on my shoulder today, we have Gilmore the cat. He's playing the role of the parrot because he's just wild. So yes, sir. So it's kind of a wild thing to be able to say, like, I am a professional content creator for D&D 5th edition. But like, tell us about that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It is very cool. I've been making stuff for 5e for all told probably 2 years in a serious way for about a year and a half, and full-time as of a couple months ago. I sort of prepped the Kickstarter while still working on it part-time and then went full-time to actually launch the thing. And now that I have the resources to do it full-time to make a book and get it shipped out. It is delightful. It's super fun. It really, like, you guys know, trying to manage a side hustle is a lot. It's just a lot of time and attention. And now I actually have the focus to really give the book the time it deserves. And it's so much fun. It's so much more fun than my day job ever was.
So, while Gilmore bullies Kay, tell us, how did all this get started? Like, what was the genesis of this?
Right. So not the very first thing I made, but the thing that pushed me over, pushed the rock down the hill was when I made the Troubadour class. So that was year and a half ago. I think it was October. Somebody gave me the idea, what if bards were half-casters? And I saw somebody else posted something about that, and it looked interesting, and I read through it. And then I said, I don't personally hate bards. I don't feel the need to chop them down to half-casters.
Oh no! Internet is being difficult.
Oh, you're
there
back.
You are. You're back.
Okay.
Last we heard was I don't need to chop them down to half-casters, which I do agree with.
Right.
As a person who plays way too many bards.
So my inspiration was, what if you made a half caster in the vein of a bard and then used the power to add a bunch more new cool fun stuff. So the big things the Troubadour gets are get.
Oh no.
Now you're back.
I already. I pulled up the Twitch on my other screen. Let me kill more things that might be chewing at bandwidth.
Oh no.
So it gets Mystic Songs that buff and debuff in an area. It gets Concordance, which is a node of power it can give to an ally to give them a bonus to hit and damage. So I made this thing. I thought it was really cool. A few people on the internet thought it was really cool. And then I said, right, I just spent an entire month making a class. I think it's great. And in the worst possible sunk cost fallacy, like, now that I've done this, I have to do everything I need to do to get attention to it.
I've done the easiest part of it. How hard could the rest of it be?
Yeah.
I've never fallen into that trap. We don't have a whole channel about TTRPGs because... Continue.
Yeah.
Before I regret my life decision.
So having made that, I then sort of made the jump to doing it from doing it as a hobby to doing it as a second job. And then having invested in that for a long time, the next logical step was, right, I mean, can I make something compelling enough that people will buy a book out of it? And so that's basically what 2024 has been for me.
Yeah. And really... Hey, Krysicon. And I think I said hi, DC, earlier during the freeze, but in case I didn't, hi, DC. Thank you for hanging out. So I'm gonna make a statement. So I've not personally done a Kickstarter, but I have worked with many people who have and advised on many of them because I have so many people who have done so many and shared their learnings with me. So I'm gonna make a statement that hopefully you know or have figured out, which is for those who are thinking about doing Kickstarters and who are like, oh, I'll do a Kickstarter and then the Kickstarter funding and ending is not the end. It is the beginning.
Yes. It can, depending on your strategy, it can be the middle. For people who have like the finished product ready to go, they'll send the files off to the printers 3 weeks post campaign. Those folks are in the middle of their journey, and so it's a different arc for them. I am not that. Prior to launching the campaign, I had the book probably about 80% complete.
That's a good amount of completion. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but like the number of people who were like, yeah, I've got a couple things, and then we'll get the funding, and then I'll write the rest of it. Or there's the people who are like, yeah.
Yeah. Getting the whole thing done in advance wasn't practical, but getting enough done in advance is sort of the plan.
Oh no. Oh no.
More internet problems.
You're back.
Now you're back.
Okay. Hopefully I got that big groan of exasperation.
Just in time for it.
So yeah, I 80% before the campaign launched. Counting stretch goals, it's at about 70% now, which is fine and what I've planned for. So my trajectory is sort of work on it for the next 6 months, get the files to the printers in early 2025, and try to get books in people's hands by next summer.
Amazing.
Technically, on that pace, I could, in theory, do one of these every single year if I just wanted to be exhausted all the time. That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, you would probably want some help.
Yeah, for people who don't know, like tell us everything that goes into, and like, you know, give us the broad strokes. Like, I'm sure we could have a 3-hour treatise on how to edit a like one of the documents. Lord knows I've had to do that and then walked out of the meeting angry because everybody just disagreed with me, and I'm like, why did you hire me to be here if you didn't want my expertise? But Yeah, give us the broad strokes of like of all that goes into getting ready for a Kickstarter, let alone executing a Kickstarter.
So the content pre-work is the fun stuff and the straightforward stuff. That's making content the way I had already been doing, putting it in people's hands, getting playtest feedback, iterating, all that good stuff. The work that is more unique is getting together the team that you need to do a Kickstarter. So while I'm kind of the face of this one, all told, there are about 15 people involved. I have a layout editor I'm working with. I have 2, maybe going up to 3 editors. I contracted out sensitivity review to Salt and Sage. I've got 7 artists who are all freelancing on the project. So coordinating all of those pieces, assembling all of those people, and like trialing them all out, right? Giving everybody a small project, see if you like working together, see, if anybody's going to do a runner with the first half of the money and never finish the job, which happens. Doesn't happen a lot, but happens.
Mm-hmm. And you got to be prepared.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So getting all of that in position, getting sample documents up for the Kickstarters. There was a sample on the campaign. There was a sample that circulated to a few communities. Getting all the campaign graphics, getting shipping estimates for everything. So you have to know roughly what your shipping costs are going to be like. Tons of marketing effort, getting a ton of promotional agreements in place. I was unlucky in that I didn't get an ad agency attached to the campaign ahead of time, because basically when you're a first-time creator, it's kind of impossible to get them to return your emails. But since we were able to fund on day one, I was able to get an ad agency onto the campaign within the first week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was great.
Wow. That's...
And so, pulling them on and getting them to run ads through the slow middle stretch of the campaign was really, really helpful.
Because, they tend
and
to
really
go
essential.
Swoop, and then boom, and then they'll spike again at the end. But that middle can be very disheartening.
There's a very rough heuristic that you do a third of the volume in the first 2 days, a third of the volume in the next 26, and a third of the volume in the last 2. Most campaigns don't actually match that curve. If you look at the actual shapes, they come out a lot more varied than just that. But for sure, getting something to keep the momentum going through the middle stretch was super, super valuable.
Yeah, and even I think for especially a first-time creator, hearing that like first third and last third, like first day and last day, and then the middle, it's going to be, because some people I've definitely seen go in and be like, we did a third on the first day, it's going to be like this, it's just going to keep going up, and just expectation setting can be very, very good. But we've talked a lot about like the nuts and the bolts, which are very interesting, right? But tell us, I don't know how much you know about chat, but we got some pirate fans in our chat, so we need to tell us what the heck this is.
Or rather, one of Kay's aspects. The menagerie. Roxy doesn't like pirates? You gonna tell me Roxy doesn't like pirates?
Roxy likes pirates because Roxy is a paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and pirates are holy.
Precisely.
Excellent.
Like I said, one of the
I'm
aspects.
like, I don't play a pirate.
No, but you play somebody who really wants to meet a pirate.
This is true.
So apologies, I did close the chat just in order to conserve bandwidth ahead of the stream.
No,
it's our
we'll
job.
read off
It's our
questions.
job. We good.
Great. So the content itself, so the basic idea is nautical adventures. So a lot of pirate stuff, not exclusively, because frankly, a whole book about pirates either is going to go super deep or be a little bit slim. But the conceit that I use, right, the title is Songs of the Spellbound Sea. So the idea is that we have the Spellbound Sea, vast, interesting, mysterious, magical ocean. And then the content in the book is sort of stuff you might find there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is themed around mini settings, which are basically island chains in this ocean as you're getting savaged by your cat.
I love him so much.
You must. So you've got content in there related to the sea itself, related to cursed islands in it, jungle islands. The Sailor's Graveyard is one of the mini settings, which is treacherous reefs and shoals where you get ghost ships and lost sailors. The final mini setting that we got to in the campaign is Storm's Eye Citadel, which is a giant Magitech fortress in the middle of a hurricane. So all kinds of good stuff there. The biggest sort of unique rules within the book is the Seafaring Supplement, which I've already published in a free fashion as the Seafarer's Manual. The book's going to get a much more developed version. So that is rules for seafaring adventure, rules for naval combat, stuff to make it practical to actually sail ships in D&D, because there honestly is kind of a dearth of good rules for that in what's been published to date.
Okay, so one of the things that we talk about is limitations of different systems, and I have the most experience with D&D, which a lot of people do, and like whether or not D&D is a good starter system is a whole different like conversation. But Kay and I also are notorious for constructing, and like everybody has to like homebrew something, but whenever we do our Christmas charity games, we have to homebrew like a whole thing, like a whole system in order to execute what we're trying to do. And between that and playing with another friend of mine who is one of my favorite chaos gremlins on Earth, and probably the most chaotic chaos gremlin I have ever encountered in my life. There's so many things that you would want to do in a medieval society that you cannot do, like that they don't have like rules. So like seafaring stuff. And I'm actually like working on a module that takes place on a boat. But I have only been on boats. I have never been on a ship. And I know at least enough to know that there's a difference between a boat and a ship. Do I still use them interchangeably? Yes. Do I still use them interchangeably to piss certain people off? Absolutely. But there's all this like seafaring jargon that I don't know because I don't sail boats. And because I don't know like the jargon and the mechanics of it, I can't homebrew anything distantly accurate about it. And then D&D, Dear Wizards of the Coast, maybe I would like to sail a ship. Like one of the big campaign from the big company that put D&D on the fucking map has a whole like ship in it, and you don't have the mechanics. So you found a big like that and racing and like horseback combat because a buddy of mine wants to rob a stagecoach. Like you can't rob a stagecoach or in and so you got to do the thing like what they do in the movies where like the car doesn't move but the background moves.
Scenery. Yeah.
So you found one of the big gaping holes in Wizards of the Coast. Well, not in Wizards of the Coast. There are other big gaping holes in Wizards of the Coast. Heyo.
We're not talking about those. We're not talking.
Not yet, anyway. But no, you found one of the big gaping holes in D&D as a system. So like what did you go through to like develop that? And yeah, like just tell us about that aspect of it.
While you collect your thoughts, I just have to say Rex said he played with a Navy vet, and their patience with Rex's lack of nautical knowledge is immense. Hey, Logomancy. Yeah, phrasing, absolutely.
So I actually Seafaring Rules was the very first piece of homebrew I ever did for 5e. Years and years ago, before I ever started making classes or subclasses or anything. And it was exactly what you described. I wanted some pirates in my game. There were not good rules for pirates, so I wrote some. They were terrible. They were not fun. They were really slow. We tried them out for 2 sessions and never went back because it just didn't. It slogged so hard.
Probably like that spaceship battle. in Starfinder 1.8.
Mm-hmm.
Cinematic battles. Thank you so much for doing that, Paizo.
Fun fact: I've played the starter adventure for Starfinder 1.8, and that spaceship battle takes so long, mostly because they kind of messed up when they wrote the adventure. Anyway,
I mean, I play in a Starfinder game that had been going for 2 years before I joined the podcast, and my GM is like, we don't do spaceship combat. The only shields in this game are the ones strapped to a character's arm, just so you know. I'm like, okay.
But yeah, so backtracking. So I wrote those rules. They didn't work. I set them aside. Years ago, I came back. I, in theory, have a better idea of what I'm doing now. So I sort of reopened those rules, pressed the backspace key a whole lot all over them. And the goal was to come up with something that would be fun, that would be engaging, that would be fast. Right, something that is not going to take 4 hours to get through a single combat. And something that is fun and will capture players' imagination. So the sort of very basic inspiration, the thing that I had in mind when I wrote the first draft years and years ago was the naval combat rules in Ghost of Saltmarsh, which Wizards of the Coast published. And like those rules don't really work. It's like 2 or 3 pages. It sort of doesn't have enough detail on some pieces and has way too much detail and slogs on others. So it's mostly a matter of taking all the pieces, finding all of the stuff that's slow, grinding it down and down and down until it can move more quickly, finding the stuff that deserves detailed modeling and adding more to it. So for instance, the initial release of the Seafarer's Manual does not include any rules for wind and weather. Wind and weather, everybody really wants them, but frankly, every single version of them runs too slow at the table.
I was just going to say, because like you're talking about like grinding down all the things that I was just like, yeah, but I want to make a storm into a character, and like because me like storytelling wise, like a big storm, and everybody has seen some movie where people are being thrown around the deck and pulling the big ropes, and like, you know, a mast breaks and all sorts of like cool shit happens. And we actually had like an episode about environmental storytelling, and it was prompted by me seeing something, and I'm like, okay, they wanted to do environmental storytelling, but they didn't make the environment a character. They didn't give it a personality. They didn't, and so like, and so I'm thinking about that as you're talking about that, and just in that short like 30 seconds, I'm like, yeah, but how would I make this cinematic event work mechanically in a way that didn't completely suck?
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff, so like the first release of these rules didn't include wind and weather. I actually have open in another tab right now the next release that is adding some very basic wind and weather. But for stuff like the big storm sequence, that's the sort of thing where what you want out of that is not base rules, right? You don't want that in the package that everybody has to read. Every DM immediately has to understand, oh, this is what wind speed means. This is what it means for a ship to be in irons. This is what it means to have the wind at your back. And that's immediately going to get too much. So you separate it out, you make it an add-on, and for like the big climactic storm scene, honestly, that's probably something that feels more like an adventure than like a basic rule piece. So some of that stuff is going to come back in the form of like, hey DMs, here's a suggestion for how you could run a big storm sequence, and give them, 3 paragraphs and some straightforward rules, and that's sort of a thing.
Yeah, all my brain is jumping to is one of my favorite Matt Mercer moments in Critical Role, which was in campaign 2, where they get on a boat and Matt like pulls out this sheet, like this thick stack of sheets for like, okay, naval combat, and it's like, I'm gonna start handing these out, right? And he hands out the packet to everyone, and everyone's kind of flipping through, and he's like, okay, this is how it's gonna run, and okay, and then they're like, okay, so the pirate ship's coming up on you, and Liam, who was playing, or not Liam, Taliesin, who's playing the cleric, is like, okay, and he's like, okay, and they're within, he's like, how far are they? He's like, this many yards. He's like, great. I cast control water. And Matt just picks at the sheets, rips it. He's like, okay, on with the story. You broke it.
I have watched campaign 2. I remember that moment.
That's one of my favorite, just a GM going, okay, well, players outsmarted the rules. Cool.
And that's one of, like, again, something that I don't know if I was talking about on the talk show or I was talking to a person about it. I do occasionally talk to people that are not K. It's incredibly rare, but there's a certain amount of pride you get when, like, your players are like, no, listen, you're dumb. Like, you had these master plans, and everybody has a plan until they get punched, and this is a right hook. And so, and everybody who's watching who DMs, if it can happen to Matt Mercer, it's going to happen to you.
100%, absolutely. And that's part of the fun of it. That's one of the things, the most enjoyable thing for a DM is when your players find all of your delicate plans and tear them up and stamp all over them. It's such a joy.
I also want to just say very quickly, like, you touched on one of the things that I hate about the world that we live in and the reality that we're in, but it's also so good and so important to bring up. In order to be good at a thing, you kind of have to suck at it first. So the fact that you made a thing that wasn't good isn't bad. It means you got the bad version out, and then after you've had more experience and you have a better understanding of what you're doing, then you can go back and go, okay, well, these 3 things weren't good, but here's some things I can build off of. And that's awesome.
And I'll say, of that original rules document, I probably kept like 3 or 4 pages worth of a 20-page thing.
That's not bad. That's not a bad ratio
huge,
at all.
Yeah, that. Ooh. I work as a professional editor, and I've come back to clients, and one of the hardest conversations to have, because it's already hard to convince somebody who has the arrogance to write a book, that the words that they put down on a page were wrong. And they're like, what are you talking about? I've been speaking this language my whole life. I know what I'm doing. And then you have to look them in the eye and be like, listen, you're an idiot. Or even just like, yes, but maybe this change these things and it'll be better. But more than one client, I've had to, and I've learned not to do this, but I've gone to more than one client and be like, okay, this is a great starting point. Take this entire stack of pages and drop it in the trash can and start again. And now I go, hey, listen, I can't edit this. Go find someone else to do it. Like go torture somebody else with this document. But like, and I've experienced this too. And I've actually like experienced it this year where I've gotten like 20 pages into a thing, 25 pages into a thing, and been like, oh man, now I know what I'm doing. Delete, start again. And as the writer, hitting delete on that hurts like hell. And as an editor, looking somebody in the eyes and be like, your darling baby that you've worked 2 years for, yeah, now it's time to start. Now you're ready to start writing this. So yeah, so keeping like 25% of it is great. Is great. Especially when it's something that like it's shared and it has to be play tested and like you got a bunch of different people working on it. Like that's really, really good.
One of my favorite authors, had a little novella out that was set after the books, the story that he finished. And I was reading it, I'm like, this feels really, and I got about halfway through it and I'm like, or no, 3/4 of the way through it, and I'm like, oh, this is where he figured out where the story was. And he just didn't hit delete. And this was supposed to be like standalone novella. And then it was like a couple months after that came out, it was like, oh, and they're announcing 2 more books in that series. I'm like, you figured it out 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with mechanical content, exactly that same thing you're talking about, but oftentimes it's really hard to know if you've got the throwaway point until you get, 10 pages of playtest feedback back. You might throw a thing out and then people try it and you get some early adopters who are super excited, and then you realize those people were just really excited and are putting up with all the bad bits. And you've got to get it in front of strangers and get strangers to tell you what doesn't work.
And then you've got to get someone who isn't you to run it so that they can't explain it with the intrinsic knowledge that you have because they don't have it because they didn't write it.
One of the playtest reports I got for the naval combat rules was talking about how combat was a total slog and took ages and ages and ages. And I realized, there was a single sentence missing from the rules that caused this person to misinterpret how they were supposed to run this. And so it took 4 times as long as it was supposed to. Better put that sentence in.
And this is why lawyers have jobs.
This is also the where does this piece go in? That's right, the circle. And how about this piece? That's right, it goes in the circle.
But millions of dollars have been won and lost because a sentence or a word is in the wrong place. And once that hits paper and that gets distributed, then that's that. And that's why they say, read your contracts, read the fine print on your licensing agreements. Every time you start up a new program or go to do a thing on your computer or go to do a thing on your phone, and have you read the licensing thing? Click OK. Like click the thing and they click, and everybody clicks the thing to the point whereby a judge a judge dismissed a thing because the company was like, hey, we put this in the licensing agreement. And the judge looked at him and be like, ain't nobody read them things, man. Nobody. No reasonable person sits down and read the 40-page thing before they click on the mobile game. No one is expected to be held to that. And I'm like, yo, that's wild. You clicked on a contract and agreed to it, and then you're not held to it because no one reads it. But yeah, no, that's one. I am very pleased to hear that you cut down combat time by 75%. By 400%. I can't math. It's either 75% or 400%. But that's wild.
I mean, ideally the combat shouldn't have taken that long, but it's what Kay said. It was this thing that was obvious in my head while writing it, that enemy ships do not get to take officer actions. But this person read through the rules and it was not obvious to them. And so I saw their feedback and was like, oh, clearly I need to spell this out. I need to make this easier for people to get, because otherwise combat's going to take ages. Yeah. Right? If essentially that would put a rival party of adventurers on every NPC ship. Think what a 5e combat is like if every combat gets a rival party of adventurers just added.
We have one of those combats that we have run 3 times, and it is an epic centerpiece combat that parties never forget. But I'm certain I have a couple gray hairs from running it.
Yeah. That stuff's great to do every now and then. You can't do it every time.
Not every time.
It's funny because it's a campaign Kay and I wrote. We get through that, and it takes a party from the home game I run and puts them in as legendary heroes. Mm-hmm. And so there's a necromancer, so like the necromancer's doing a bunch of things, and you have 4 people who have all of their powers and all of their skills and stuff. And then we added mechanics on top of, by we, I mean I, because I did the combat design, and Kay will never forgive me for that. And they are right to not forgive me for it. But we get to the end of it and it's like midnight and we're like, oh man, we are never doing that again. And then an opportunity comes to run the module again. And Kay's like, hey, do you want to, and we all had fuzzy memories, like fuzzy, happy memories of running this. And we're like, yeah. And then we get to planning it. And then Kay's like, oh no, I fucked up. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, well, we remember that big centerpiece fight? Like the big couple. And I'm like, oh fuck, we forgot that we have to do that again. No, didn't we? Did I go in and change it and fix it? No.
No.
It's still just as complicated as the first fucking time.
Have we forgotten a mechanic of that fight every time we've run it?
Every time.
Yes.
And we're co-DMing it, so it's not just like Kay's running the thing and then Kay forgot a thing and I'm like, oh well. And it's not like me running thing and I forgot a thing and Kay went, look what you did again. No, it's we both are like, all right, we got all these plates spinning, we got all these things happening, we got one of the characters spinning, everything's happening, and then like the next day we're like, oh fuck, we forgot about that important thing, didn't we? In case like, yeah, we forgot about that thing. And it's always a different thing, but it's happened multiple times where we just fucking forget something.
So, naval combat, we got pirates, we got Magitech in the middle of a hurricane, which is awesome. Give us kind of the over arc. You gave us a couple points, but like what all comes with this little book adventure goodies?
Right. So it's about 2/3 or 3/4 player options. So that's 3 new classes. The Troubadour that we talked about earlier, the Swashbuckler class, which is a dexterity and charisma-based skirmisher martial. The Blood Rager, that is a half-caster whose gimmick is that they have fully 2 subclasses. They get a sorceress bloodline and a barbaric discipline and combine them both. Playtesting that is fun. Combinations just explode. So 3 classes. I need to check my draft table of contents. I think the final total for subclasses, aside from those 3, is 31 or 32 subclasses.
Wow.
Wow.
It's at least 2 for each of the base game classes, and a couple of them it's 3 or 4. More than half of them it's 3 or 4. It's a bunch. So a whole bunch of subclasses, several classes. 6 playable species are going to be in there. They're probably the poster child and the mascot of the Kickstarter campaign is Achayoto, which is Axolotl folk, which is an incredibly cute little amphibian people. So playable species, bunch of magic items, bunch of monsters. I referenced earlier the mini settings, so a little bit more detail about what those are. If you ever read in the Critical Role Wildmount book, one of the things that I really loved is when you go through the geography of that. Mm-hmm. Like every region is described with just a couple of paragraphs and then like 3 or 4 adventure hooks. Mm-hmm. It works really well. It's really graceful. Yeah. So the mini settings are a similar idea to that. They're going to be more fleshed out. It'll probably be 3 or 4 pages each rather than just a paragraph. Each one will come with a map. But they're all going to have adventure hooks. They're going to have some factions that you can drop in and sketch out. And the idea is you can take any of these, and if you want to run the Spellbound Sea as its own area, you can do that. Or you can just take an individual mini setting and plop it into your game world where it makes sense. So if you want to slap a jungle island in somewhere, just grab the jungle mini setting, drop it in, it'll make a big sploosh, and now you've got a jungle island to play with.
I love that. Kato, our favorite Chaos Gremlin, says 32 subclasses sounds nightmarish to balance. What's the first step in trying to approach balance with that many options?
So to be clear, the 32 subclasses, that's for all of the base game classes. That's like 2 monks, 2 fighters, 2 barbarians, etc. In terms of how you balance all of that, a lot of it, especially as you do more of them, you just get a better muscle for what's going to work and what isn't. Much of it, about half of the content in the book overall, has already been in public in some form, and is being collected in here. So I've already got people playing that in the wild. I've already got feedback coming in. The Blood Rager, I actually released an update about 20 minutes before we started talking. So when I flip back over to Discord, I've got a big list of stuff people are seeing as they read over it. So the biggest thing is, so you've got gut feel, where you just kind of get a sense. Mm-hmm. You've got math. I have pages and pages and pages and tables of math. I just have this elaborate system of spreadsheets that simulated parties, simulated builds, benchmarks against various base game content. And all of that gives you an idea, and then you playtest. You put it in front of people, you run it yourself. I get public playtests from people in the wild. I have some paid playtesters that I work with who like intentionally put it through its paces and write more structured feedback. And you just do it over and over again. And you can do like gut feel is great and super helpful. Math is really good for checking your intuition, but you don't know how it does until you actually see it at a table.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at the spots where base 5e gets the balance wrong, if you sort of open up the hood and figure out what's going on, almost always it's a case where the math looks good on paper if you can find that math and pull it out, but then it just doesn't. Either there was an assumption that was wrong or it didn't get play tested fully.
Yeah.
And it's that experience at the table that really is the defining thing.
Just hadn't found the correct chaos gremlin.
Yes.
Because yes, I have definitely been in classes where I'm like, especially when I was first learning Pathfinder 2e, it's like I understand kind of how this character's supposed to work, but I can't figure out how to hit the gas on it. And then I've definitely been in a thing where it's all like, I was trying to build a background. Like I started with a character, right? I started with the concept of like, this is what this character's personality is. How do I backwards engineer like the class that would result in a character with this mindset? Oh, it's a rogue monk and I've broken the game by level 6. No one should ever let me play this character ever.
Oh, a rogue monk at level 6 hits you about 46 times.
It's a
all
problem.
directly in the mouth.
Especially because it was like is it the Kinsai? It's the one where they're just weapon focused, like they don't get any of the other, but then any of your weapons becomes a holy weapon. So you give yourself sneak attack with a holy weapon every time, plus a free disengage, plus stunning strike. It's just bad. It's not right. Yes, Rex says spreadsheets. You have gotten our numbers people very excited by the mention of spreadsheets.
Lots of spreadsheets. And I mean, one of the nice thing about working for 5e, since 5e's been out for a decade now, is that you can go see what optimizers have done. You can look up, all right, what are the broken builds? What are average builds? Like, what is the range of things that should be possible? And so it's pretty easy to use that as, boundaries to stay within. So if I make content that is stronger than a great weapon master, polearm master, glaive spamming monster, that's pretty clearly a problem. But as long as I'm underneath that somewhere, I won't snap the game in two.
And if you make a class that is not as get ready, we're gonna see the reaction. If you get something that's not as strong as a Gloomstalker or a Drake Warden Ranger, then you've definitely
Look, all I'm saying is where do you stab a vampire the Ranger class in 5e after all these years is still ass. And if you have to play one specific subclass with one specific build out of an entire class, when I can do sorcerer anything, when I can do rogue anything, and when I can do druid anything and have a good time, but if you aren't doing one specific thing in Hunter, then this is the problem that World of Warcraft has been fighting against for the past how long has that game been out now? 70 years?
Yeah, at least 90.
The first build of World of Warcraft was on Fortran and they were punch cards. But they had that problem where every time they roll out a new thing, people figure out the best way to do damage. And that if you aren't doing that specific thing, you aren't playing your class right. And in D&D it's the same thing. It's like Rangers, if you have to do one thing, that you don't have build diversity, and then it's not going to be interesting. You look at Baldur's Gate 3 and there's still You can take different feats and still do great things. You don't have to take the same 3 fucking. Anyway, I'm done.
I'm just saying, David, you have not dropped an entire full-ass dragon onto a battlefield. And it feels really good.
I mean, I have. I was just the DM.
Okay, as a player, looking your
no.
GM in the eye and saying, cool, I drop a medium-sized dragon on the field, and it bites your monster in the face. What you can do about it?
That has to be hilarious. That has to be that again. That has to be one of those like I forgot you could do this. Tear up your paper moments.
And then, oh yeah, so the paladin just crit on a divine smite. I'm going to use my reaction. My dragon's going to breathe additional d6s of acid damage onto that crit.
Yikes! Yikes!
David, you would not want to make a hoof-hearted effort when trying to kill a vampire centaur. Thank you, Rex.
So,
we have spent a lot of time on centaurs and centaur accessibility and how do centaurs work and can centaurs ride horses, and it destroys. And someone put out a tiki-taki that David sent me this morning that's like, where do you stab a vampire centaur? Because they've got where's the heart on a, is it 2? Yeah. And it
and because they have 2 rib cages.
Yes, for sure.
So is doing one heart enough? Do you have to do both?
So
are there 2 hearts?
Right.
And are there 2 stomachs?
So pitchforks have multiple tines. So if you, in theory, if you landed just right, a pitchfork, like you got and so you get. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Like we're about preservation of centaurs, and we're inclusive. So centaur vampires. Now I gotta put a centaur vampire in my fucking. God damn it. No.
I'll just bring us back.
Adventure.
I'll bring us back to seafaring content and say a trident's going to beat a pitchfork any day of the week for that.
Right. Oh yeah. Right. We're trying. I was like, hey, there's a weapon that has, and I was like, pitchfork. But no, a trident, great. And like, trident and net is like a classic combo. So you net him, so he can't run away, even if he turns into bats. Now, if a centaur vampire turns into bats, are the bats centaurs too?
Where do the wings come out of? Which back?
Does it have 4 sets of wings? Or 2 sets of wings? Does it have 4 wings? Hey.
Now I want a centaur driving a car, says DC Lacer.
This hurts my brain.
Again, how do centaurs wear pants? Is it the front 2? Is it the back 2? Is it all 4?
It's the back 2. You gotta cover up your pee parts with the pants. Like that's all that really matters.
The front part looks more like human legs.
Yeah, but there are no pee parts there.
But nobody minds that a horse doesn't wear pants.
No, but a horse is also not a centaur. And yes, Kato, we are asking the questions that matter here. This is what we do. I warned you we were going to rabbit trail. We need to start referring to our rabbit trails as centaur trails.
Yes. But tridents, that actually tell us about itemization, because one of the things I struggle with when it comes to, especially for generating stuff in D&D that has, thousands of people who've spent a whole lot of time thinking about items and have written some really cool items. Like, tell us about itemization in Spellbound Sea. Tell us about your process and sort of approaching that, because again, 32 subclasses is a lot. Playtesting a bunch of them is a lot, and then throwing items into that mix definitely adds to the complexity.
I mean, the kind of, maybe surprisingly, the thing that probably has the biggest risk for upsetting game balance in the whole book is 1 page of additional equipment for firearms. Right? Because it's pirates, they're gonna have guns. The base, I forget, I think they're actually in the Dungeon Master's Guide, not even the Player's Handbook, has a base pistol and musket that are fine. They work. They're kind of underwhelming because they're just crossbows. They're just
there
loud
to
crossbows.
check the box.
The game I'm about to join uses the critical role guns with the misfire chances, which is exciting.
The crit roll guns exist. So Spellbound Sea has its own firearm supplement because you have to give swashbucklers appropriate guns to use.
I played an Irish swashbuckler, so it's very nice to see they get appropriate weaponry.
Excellent. So I added a fairly tame set. They are more powerful than basic guns. They're basically balanced by cost. I think that's one balance lever 5e doesn't really use that often, is gold, as opposed to Pathfinder or Starfinder, where that's core to the progression, is that you can afford better stuff. So I've got those worked in. There's a bunch of magic items coming in through the book that are all sort of tailored to the classes and the mini settings, and trying to make stuff more exciting. And when you're doing balance, especially for all of these classes, you do have to think through every sort of itemization and build. So that's where all of the tables and spreadsheets come in. Is because I have formulas for charting all of those out, so I can check like, oh, is it possible to do Great Weapon Master with this subclass? It is. Okay, let me check the numbers. Are they disgusting? Yeah, kind of. We better tone that down.
And when people talk about min-maxing,
what happens when an artificer gets their hands on that weapon?
Right. and when people talk about min-maxing, there's a 100% focus on the max part. And it's kind of weird to go to a playtester and be like, all right, give me the worst build possible with all of these options. Like make a mess of this and then see if it's still viable. Because in I don't necessarily know in like D&D, because I haven't done this in D&D, but there are plenty of video games where you go and you make the worst build possible and you can't do shit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one of the things with D&D homebrew that you do have to do, especially with new classes, because it's very easy for a new player or a player who's not used to optimizing to accidentally make something that kind of sucks. And the base classes have this problem too, right? It's pretty easy to make, a warlock who, if you pick Pact of the Chain for a high level game, you're going to be kind of sad. Your familiar is not really going to do anything.
Yeah.
If you try to pick a class that's, bad in melee and you go and get beat up in melee, that's going to happen. So one of the things you want to do with homebrew stuff is try to make sure that there is an obvious path to be baseline effective. And that sort of gives people an entryway into playing this class without, setting up a bunch of rakes from step up.
And that happens a lot too. We had one of my games switch systems, and I had a character built who worked. They weren't how I would have built them in a different system, but I made them work in the system, and we had played long enough, they were established, and then we switched to a different system, and it was like, they were a magic user. It's like, for this kind of magic, they have to cast off of the stat that is the fact that this stat is a dump is a cornerstone of this character's personality. I had to go to my GM and be like, please just let me cast off this other stat. Here is the explanation for it, but I may as well make them not a magic user, but their being a magic user is a cornerstone of how we've established this. So, yes, it is very easy for things to break for various reasons.
Yeah, for sure. And it's making stuff that it is obvious how to have a good time is important.
So there's tons of fun stuff in this. There's tons of frustrating stuff in building. What would you say is the biggest challenge you faced in getting all of this off the ground?
I mean, it's just work. It's effort. And some of it is, there's a big timing piece. right? I think the big homebrew creators who got started and went semi-pro or pro like 4 or 5 years ago, when the community was a little bit thinner, when people were just reaching the limits of the material Wizards of the Coast had published, like that was a wider canvas to play in, and an easier one to find an audience. Right now, especially with social media shattering the way it is the last couple of years, finding a coherent audience is really hard. That actually is one of the big reasons why I was determined to run a Kickstarter, is to sort of get a bunch of people looking at my content and get some audience kind of locked in. Right now, I know for a fact now that there are about 1,500 people who are willing to buy a book that I write. And so I can use those people as the core of an audience to go forward for publishing more stuff and putting out more content. Yeah, it's plugging away every channel, every day.
Yeah. It is, it's challenging. And it also, I want to go back to the thing we basically opened with, but there's, especially when you're making a book, when you're making an adventure, be it a path, be it whatever you're putting out there. The number, and I stress this every time because I've heard this from multiple creators. This is why the number of people who intend, I'm gonna make PDF, I'm gonna make this thing, I'm gonna put it out PDF, and then maybe I'll make a stretch goal to where if we fund by a certain percentage, then I will offer a print physical book. And I'm like, no, that's gonna go so badly for you. And so I'm so glad to hear that you're like, no, I'm making the book, and I sourced how much it cost, and I know all of this, because that is a whole project in and of itself.
Yes. And there's a lot of reason. I mean, the big reason to do it is just there are people who really like physical books. And so there's a whole audience that if you can put something on their shelf, that's just viscerally exciting to them in a way a PDF never would.
Yeah.
But
it's also easier to figure out, this is how much the book costs, and then the PDF is this, and I can tack that on, as opposed to, I'm selling a PDF. How many books? When does that cost begin?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I would never have touched the Kickstarter if I didn't have quotes for the book and quotes for shipping and quotes for fulfillment already sitting there in my inbox in advance.
Yes.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole lot of new skills I never thought I would have to acquire, but I'm a publisher now. Woohoo!
Which, awesome. And I will say this about physical books, and it leads to a larger idea about game design, in that you have to allow paths, and like, we were talking about min-maxing earlier, but you have to allow paths for sub-maximal efficiency. Because
I love it.
There's a word for it, and I couldn't reach and find it.
I love that word. That is now my new word. All words are made up, and sub-maximal is now a made-up favorite word.
Because like I've had people like screech at me, and they're like, listen, there's a more efficient way to do this. And I'm like, yes, but I get to bonk heads longer if I do it the less efficient way. So I'm going to go bonk heads because I am here to bonk. So with books, I watched on stream someone work on their homebrew campaign. And they have a PDF of they have D&D Beyond and the PDF of the PHB and the DMG and all that stuff. And they had a setup similar to Kay's. You can't see, but like the bottom, or you can see. Yeah, you can't see.
No, they can't see.
But like the bottom shelf is books.
And there's more. These are just the ones in this room.
Right.
Now my camera's all messed up. There we go. Yeah.
And so they have it on their computer, and they're working on it, and they're like, oh man, I have to find a thing. And instead of hitting Control F on the PDF, they turn around, grab the book, and they start flipping through it. And it's not like they aren't tech people because they're running a stream. But like, and you know, having done famously, Kay and I had to build a character. We joined a Pathfinder first edition campaign, and we sat at a table for 3 hours making the fucking character because the character creation is bulk. And we were
Friends don't let friends make characters in Pathfinder 1.
Right. There were multiple copies of the book. I had 2 different apps on my phone. I had a laptop out. Kay had a tablet. Someone else had a tab. We were using all these different things to try to, but the visceral, tactile experience of like cracking open the book is something that will never be replaced. My godbrother, who I live with, is like, I will never get a tablet. I will never get an e-reader. I will only buy paper books. He actually just got his copy of the PHB, and I was like, listen, if you want to like take a gander at the PHB before you like buy it. And he's like, I ain't looking at it on your computer. I ain't looking at it on my computer. I ain't looking on it on anybody's computer. Unless a tree fell over and you scribbled on it, I'm not looking at it. And like many people, he sat down and read the thing like a book, and it's just been like turning pages and appreciating the art. And also, like, let's be real, art is a little different when it's on on paper in front of you. And so, like, you know, when you go to do a Kickstarter thing, and like Kay said, it's good that you thought about like the actual like cost, and not just cost, but like the logistics of it. Because like you mentioned earlier that you're working with a layout person, and people don't realize how much more work making a book is just from a design layout perspective compared to a PDF, let alone the cost, let alone the logistics of like printing and shipping and storage and all these other things. It's
Printing and shipping, especially post-pandemic, because prices are doing this.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into it, and there's so much that I've had to learn 100 skills. I never wanted to know if I were trying to do it all myself, that number would be 1,000.
Yeah.
So it's so important. Like, I never could have gotten this off the ground unless I'd taken the time and found the right people to work with.
That's awesome.
And gotten good working relationships and really assembled a whole team. Like I said, there are 15 people involved in this, and I love every single one of them. They're doing amazing work.
And I want to make sure that we point out for anyone watching the VOD or watching live, yes, the Kickstarter funded. Yes, the Kickstarter is complete. But we're not just talking about things from the past. You can still get your paws on this, if that is what you so desire.
Yeah, I think pre-orders are probably going to be open at least through the end of the year, I expect. The goal is to get books in people's hands next summer, so that means getting files off to the printers early 2025. So plenty of time to get in on it, and you know, people can go, they can pre-order. My intention is that we're going to be able to start getting work in progress drafts into people's hands by end of August this year.
Nice.
So
wow,
that's the plan.
That's fast. That's fucking fast.
We're working on it. Like I said, my layout designer is amazing. So
yeah, I kickstarted this pre-pandemic and just got it like a couple months ago. So yes, fast.
Yeah, like I've kickstarted a thing, and like 2 years later, I get an update, and I'm like, oh, I forgot I paid money for this. And they're like, hey, so we're probably going to be ready to send things to the printer in like 2 years. So, you know, buckle up. And I'm like, I'm glad my grandkids are going to read this book.
I have a box of minis over here on my shelf that was scheduled. They budgeted a year for production and shipping after they ran their Kickstarter in like 2019. So they had the worst possible timing.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
that's fucking awful.
they got screwed by the pandemic, and they got screwed by crappy distributors. And I think their 1-year project took 4 years to deliver.
Mhm.
And in their
Yoinks.
defense, they are great
Yeah.
minis. I love
Yeah.
those minis.
These incredible dice. They are so much better than I thought they would be. They do more than I thought they would do. But I mean, I ordered these pre-pandemic, and I know how much work they had to go through because pandemic cost of everything went up, and they were like, "But people have already paid their money.
Yep.
We gotta
Yeah.
make this work." And I know that I know people who've ordered sets and they still haven't gotten their dice because they can't get the black ones to work. The 20 numeral on the solid black ones just won't work. They're just like, we're real sorry. We're still working on it.
Wild.
I'm just like, my heart. I'm so sorry, y'all. That's gotta be so stressful.
And I will say, like, everything that like despite like the challenges that the people that we've done, that we've like slapped down money for Kickstarters have had, most people are doing it for the first time, like doing business, let alone Kickstarters, is its own skill. And like you said, it's an amalgamation of skills, and you have to balance contracting people versus doing it yourself. Same thing with, like, you know, streaming. Like, Kay and I talk all the time about, like, Kay is like, listen, this takes so much time. And I'm like, I know it takes so much time. Good God, thank you. Because if you gave it to me to do, it would just never get done, because I would look at it and be like, no, I ain't doing this. But like, if we had $1 million tomorrow, it would all go up in smoke, because we'd hire, you know, 50 people to do all the things that we want to do. And 25 of those people would be doing all the things that Kay does right now. Like 25 of those people wouldn't expand what we were doing. And so it's tough to balance that. But my original point was, we've slapped down for Kickstarters, and Kay and I both have been really patient, because like I said, a lot of people, this is their first time doing it. And I don't know about other people, but we've had really good luck where almost everything that we funded has been like, it's been a long time, but here it is. And it's always been great. Like, I've never gotten a Kickstarter thing and I went, oh man, the build quality is kind of shoddy, or this seems like half-assed. Like, they're all full of passion and full of like people's hopes and dreams poured into this thing. And it really, really, really shines when you get the stuff. So, you know, when pre-orders go up, slap down your money for pre-orders, because Ben is ahead of the game in terms of Kickstarters, and it won't take 27 years for it to roll out.
Thank you for their.
I sure hope so. Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope that this is gonna meet people's expectations. I'm gonna be putting a ton of effort into it. All the freelancers I'm working with are going to be putting a ton of effort into it. I feel really good about our manufacturer and our printer. And just this week, I'm hoping to get a signed deal for the fulfillers to do all of the getting books from warehouses to people's doors, which, again, new skills. You don't know that that's a whole industry until you know that that's a whole industry.
Yeah, and it's also really cool that you've done a whole bunch of this work and had it kind of in different little pieces, and then you found a way to kind of combine it all, give new things to your, you know, to the people who've supported you all along, improved the stuff that they've been playtesting and playing with. Like, yeah, Ben's passion is coming through. Can't wait for it to go live. Well, it is live and it has funded. So now it is simply pre-orders, because cash money is in hand. You just have to turn the cash money into product, which that's a whole skill set. That's multiple skill sets.
Yes, working on that. But yeah, the campaign ran from June 11 to July 11, so we did just miss getting this up before the campaign finished. But absolutely, if folks are interested, go to BackerKit, or I think we're going to put out the Kickstarter link. Follow that, then follow the link to BackerKit. You can get in on the pre-orders. And I should be able to get, like I said, hoping to get work in progress drafts out by late August, early September.
Awesome. So we're not there yet, but we are nearing the end of our time together. So I'm going to ask first chat, because there's always that delay and people have to type and that takes time. So chat, if you have any burning final questions, anything you'd like to know, no, we are not talking about centaurs anymore, so save those for the Discord. But while chat thinks about that, then any final thoughts or any like really cool things or things you're very passionate about with this project that you want to make sure we bring up before we let you get back to the many skills you need to complete?
I mean, for my part, I think we touched on a lot of the stuff that I'm really excited for that I think is really cool. I will, just as a personal thank you, I already called out my layout designer. I will also call out the art team I'm working with. Are amazing. One of the things that I'm very happy we can do for the book is all of the art is done by humans. No robots involved, except for me, I suppose.
So many robots and yet none.
Yes, no AI art, all real humans, all fantastic artists. I had the enormous good fortune that the very first time I tried to commission art, I ran into Xana Arnautovic, who is one of my principal artists for the project, and was so amazing to work with and did such a wonderful job that kind of inspired me to keep making stuff. And I thank myself every day that, if I'd gotten a ripoff artist for that very first commission job, if I'd gotten somebody doing a runner or passing off AI artwork, like I might have just gotten too discouraged to do the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But instead I get to work with phenomenal artists every single day, and it makes me so happy. It makes my heart so happy.
Absolutely. That's when you find that artist. And that's the other thing I love about, now, as most of y'all know, I used to work at TV and art. So I've worked with a lot of artists, and there is nothing quite like talking to an artist and being like, I've got this thing, and give them a rough idea. And they come back with your idea, but better on paper. And you're like, yes. And that's the thing I will say every time. Don't be so dedicated to one particular, very detailed, exact vision that you don't let an artist do what an artist does. Because if you let an artist work, give them enough freedom, it will be amazing.
As it turns out, what artists are good at is making art. So if you just let them make art and get out of the way,
yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Especially if you can, and David will rant about this, but especially if you can give, even if it's an MS Paint doodle, even if it's drawn on a napkin, you give an artist something that's vaguely recognizable as your thing, and they can just do it. It's great. It's amazing.
So I cannot art. It is sorcery to me. It is magic. It is more magic than Wi-Fi. And because I can't stick figure. And I have sent Kay the absolute worst MS Paint art in the history of MS Paint art. And Kay has then kicked back the most beautiful, fleshed out, gorgeous fucking thing. And I'm like, that's not fair. That's cheating. That's, like I said, it's sorcery to me.
It was just a map.
It's not just a map. And here's what people don't, your average person who hasn't commissioned art, as a creative, here's something that people don't understand is if you're a creative in one aspect, so you're a musician, you play the guitar or you play the drums or whatever, you put them in a room with other musicians and they will put their heads together and churn out something magic. But people don't realize how much different types of art inspire. I forget what musician it is, but there's a musician where every time they get stuck on their album, they go paint for 6 months. Hey, shoots out this map, and I'm like, oh, there are all these places that I now have to put things. And there was like one particular place where I ended up developing like a big centerpiece of the campaign around this one place because it was like pixels on a screen that Kay put in a place.
Kay went, this is a weird spot. It looks like it should have a tower. I could take out the tower. David's like, don't you dare.
Yeah, don't touch it. It's important. You didn't know it was important. I didn't know it was important. And like the same thing has been true of like other types of commissions. Like Kay has gotten art and I have gotten art and I have found stuff online where I've like literally every piece of fiction that I have written started with an image in my head and like one particular scene, and then it fleshed out in both directions. What happened before, what happened after. Like that's my process. But so much art has been the starting place for that scene. Like I wrote a short story like years ago because I went to a museum and I looked at a painting of a bowl of fruit. Like I forget what that's called. Like, hey, you know what it's called when it's the right. I saw a still life at a museum, and still life is the most boringest fucking art in the history of fucking boring ass art. And it turned into 30,000 words. And so like people really underestimate. And then also like Kay will be the first to tell you the art brings these books to life. Like what really sets apart a lot of the systems that we play, that we're interested in, and we have like a backlog of systems that we have to go through. But one of the things that out of like the dozens of systems we have access to that makes us go, oh, we're gonna, is Kay will be like, David, look at this art.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow. And then that means we're flipping through it and we're looking at it now. And I'm gonna post the link again. If you have not clicked on the Kickstarter, if you have not clicked on the homepage, stop what you're doing and go do that right now, because the art is stunning. Like,
and with that, I think we need to wind things down. So, thank you again so much for coming, Ben. Final thoughts, final plugs. Give us your outro so that we can send you on your way.
Brett, thank you so much for having me. This was a ton of fun. Really enjoyed talking to you. If people want to find my stuff, you posted the links, but it's SoManyRobots.com. It's SoManyRobots on all the socials. You can just Google Kickstarter Spellbound Sea or tinyurl.com/Spellbound Sea if you want to find the book. Check it out. See if you like it. If not, then please pay attention to me somewhere, and hopefully down the line I'll pique your interest and you'll give it a second look. Yeah, this is exciting. Everything is awesome. I'm very happy.
Well, congratulations again on a successful Kickstarter, funded within the first day. Like, it's incredible. We're so excited for you. David, who the heck is you, and what the heck is we doing here?
I am trying to figure out how Kay uses a keyboard and mouse without using a keyboard and mouse. Still magic to me. But this is the Chaotic Wholesome Presents talk show, where every week we talk about cool stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person. And we have the privilege of talking about a bunch of cool products like Spellbound Sea, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity so that everybody can have a good time.
And thank you again, chat, for joining us. I'm Kay. I've been your other host. Gilmore has wandered away, so I am unassaulted at this exact moment. Join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, for the final game of Magnificent Pride. It's going to be a game of Monster Hearts run by Candace the Magnificent, and it is truly going to be magnificent. Thursday, David and I are playing Baldur's Gate right here. And then Friday, I will be over on Entropy Emporium playing the Wild Weirds War. And if you watched the first Magnificent Pride game, you know who I'm playing, but you got to keep that subclass secret because the rest of the party doesn't know yet. So, thank you all so much. We are going to raid over, and we will see you all next time. Be kind to yourself and be excellent to others. Bye, y'all.